Tell me and I will forget. Teach me and I may remember, or involve me and I will learn. Today we're gonna talk about how you as a coach can impact the learning of the players that you coach. In order to learn them something, we have to give feedback. But how do you give effective feedback towards your players so that they can build upon and they learn something and they become a better player, and in the end you will have better results? In this video we will go deep down into giving effective feedback towards your players. So grab a pen and a piece of paper and let's get into it. What is up, guys? My name is Donnie from nextlevelesports.com, the #1 platform for esports coaches and team development to help you and your team getting to the next level by getting the people side of esports right. So if you clicked on this video and you're really curious how to do effective feedback or even more things to develop yourself as a player, your team, or you as an esports coach that is watching this to go towards the next level, please consider liking and subscribing, because we post 3 deep content videos every week for you to provide the most value. So no further ado, thank you very much if you liked and subscribe, else just sit along and thank you for watching. Let's get into it. There are many definitions of feedback, but what it all boils down to its core, it's about giving information about someone's performance in order for them to improve. You never give feedback in order for someone to get worse. We never do that, even though it might come across as negative or positive or whatever you may call it. We all do it from an intention for someone to learn or develop. It can backfire, for sure. We probably all have learned about that. But now we're taking a look at feedback at its core, what it is, and how to become effective at it. So the first step, what we're gonna look at is, when do you give feedback and when is it the most effective? The most effective point in time is right after the event. So when someone made a beautiful play or they took a risk and they are playing more conservatively, normally you can praise them and give them positive feedback. Hey, Harry, I really love that you took that risk in that time because it created an advantage for our team and you had a good timing, and that way you got a lead for the team and we could snowball, etc. Good job, dude. Or you can ask a question like, hey, did you see that as well that I see? And they could maybe nod or just say, yes, I saw that. So you know the point is taken. But sometimes in specific games, for example, League of Legends, there is no coach allowed, for example, in a match. They are allowed in a practice, but not in a match. So you cannot give the direct feedback. But afterwards, after the game is done, you can give them the right feedback when it's time for them to listen to. Maybe if they won and they're very excited, maybe they need to stress out and let it all go loose and they are very enthusiastic and they want cheering and hugging their friends on stage, for example. But maybe after 2 minutes or maybe 5 minutes or 15 minutes, the first moment that feels right to give the feedback, you can come back to it, whether that's positive or negative, but it's also a balance when to give that feedback as well. But oftentimes, I would say 7 out of 10 times, the best moment to give feedback is right after the event itself, because players generally have a very hard time to remember the details and the feeling and the momentum they were inside that moment of the play. So even though you might have a couple of practices planned in right back to back, and after 3 hours you want to talk about game 1, even though you've made notes, it can be a bit blurry for the players, or they are more occupied with their heads in the last game, in the third game that they played. So it's very important to balance out for you as well as a coach. When do I give feedback, and is it that important to say it right now and maybe infringe or maybe use that 30 seconds pause, for example, in CSGO, to talk about this issue, that it is that important? Or maybe I should write it down and it should be enough for the review after 2 or 3 games. That is also a bit of balance that you should decide, but oftentimes it's better to do it right then and there. 7 out of 10 times. So you decide whether that is fit, yes or no. So the next general thing in order to give effective feedback is you don't just say like, hey, I saw Harry, I saw you doing that play, you went here and there, next time I want you to move there. Even though that is direct feedback and you coach them on it, it is not that fruitful for them to learn that way, because you tell them, but they will probably forget. Maybe they will act upon it in that moment, but what about the next game? What about tomorrow? What about next week? So you want to find a way in order to coach and ask questions that they come up with their own ideas and their own solutions of the mistakes that they made and also the improvements that they made, so they ingrain it into themselves and they can gain self-confidence from it. So in order to look at that, how we should do that, we're gonna take a look at the next slide. This is the overview, so you know what the most effective way is to give feedback. All these degrees have its place and time within your coaching. They can be effective at different moments, because if you look instantly at the top of the pyramid, sometimes you need to just be able to say within the game something that is wrong to fix that mistake or to boost someone's confidence inside the moment. That can be effective. But to improve a player's perspective on their own performance, you want to go to the bottom side of this pyramid, what the player self said and did. And in order to do this, you need a bit more time. You need to ask questions and to add your own perspective and mix it well with the player's perspective and to let the player come up with his own questions. So let's hop onto this model and start with the top of the pyramid. So the first level is giving and telling the player what needs to be done. Giving feedback. It's, hey, Harry, you did this wrong, so next time I want you to do this. Yes, coach. So probably this is effective inside the moment where you want a quick fix or just something to make him aware or to focus more inside the moment or that specific task. It's not really correlated with something towards the future or massive heaps of improvement, but it is and can be effective at that moment. So the next option is that what the player has been seeing. So instead of giving the feedback, you show him maybe a piece of the map that you're saying with different champions within League of Legends or enemies or a specific default or a specific position within Rocket League or FIFA, what you should do. And it makes them think and make connections for themselves inside their mind. So if you want to make a concept clear, image is a very powerful tool to add on with the feedback. So the next level is what is at 55% effectiveness after 3 months after you've teach them, is what the players hear and saw. So you give them that image, maybe a VOD review, and you talk with them what they need to do in order to improve their performance towards the future. So because you give them the image and you talk with them, you said what needs to be improved and what you want to see, then after 3 months you have about a 55% chance that it would stick with them in order for them to improve towards the next level. So of course 55% is not enough to be consistent at improving, although 55% is always better than 10%. So keep that in mind. So if you're at 55 or maybe 35% at that level and that stage and you're doing images, you're still doing good, but now you know and you're conscious in how you can improve your feedback even further to have the most impact towards your players. So the next step is involve the player with questions. So you want to ask open questions towards the player in order for them to give their own perspective of the game. And you ask questions how they view it and how they should maybe view it. So they come up with their own solutions and insights and new perspectives because you help them reach that level of understanding. So in order, for example, to demonstrate this, for example, you have top laner within League of Legends. He's making a teleport play and he didn't react on the bottom side play where there was a deep ward because he probably didn't see it or you don't know. So you sit with him and you say, hey, Harry, this was a bottom play. What do you think about this situation? Was there anything that you could have done? So instead of like giving the straight information or the straight answer of like, Harry, there was a deep wart, you should do this, so next time I want to see it, ask him the question, because when it comes from himself, the solution, he feels more empowered from himself that he brought up the solution, and it brings more connections within his brain and in his memory in order for them to execute it towards the future. So when you move on with this particular example, so Harry, what do you think what you could have done in this moment? He probably maybe would look like the situation. Well, I saw a deep ward there, so I could probably teleport. And then you can ask a question like, okay, but what happened there? What stopped you from taking that teleport play or that specific play on the map, if that is a different game? So this is translatable to every game. He could have said like, oh, I was aware of the map, or I saw the map but I didn't hear a call within the team, and so I kind of froze, or I was not sure if I should make the play, yes or no. So by asking these questions, you also learn directly more about the intentions and the context of that player. So you can become even more precise and effective with that play, because now you can probably also understand that there's not only problem with the top laner that didn't teleport towards the bottom lane, but it could also be a communication issue because he didn't respond to it, or maybe he should communicate more. So then you can continue with saying, okay, what do you think? What should be player? Yeah, I could communicate more, and yeah, maybe I could ask if I should be teleporting bottom. Yeah, that's correct. So next time, let's do it. So that is the 70% effectiveness of feedback. So you talk with the player and talk him through, giving open-ended questions so you get more insight into his context and how he views this particular play and the performance and his process as a whole. So you have more information to build this context around him. So that's a 70% effective. So because he told his own story and his own solution, and you say, that sounds like a really good solution, Harry. So next time he's more eager to use that solution because he came up with it for himself. But what is the most effective way? If you have the time, and sometimes it doesn't even need a lot of time, but just like 2 or 3 questions. It is the same as the example as before with what the player said, but now you instantly give him a task or ask him what he should do the next game, and that he should actually focus on executing upon it. So in order, especially within practice or training situations, you can, for example, say, okay, this went wrong, team. It was not only Harry's mistake, but on the bottom side, Jerry was not communicating that they wanted to TP play or could use help, so I want you to use that as well. So this is what we discovered from the information that Harry gave. Harry gave this solution, and I find it a really powerful solution, so let's do it next time. Okay, so let's set up this particular sort of type of context play. So next game, they go into practice or the scrim, and they set up a similar set of situation and they execute upon it. And when they have that situation, and the best part is if they had a positive experience with that they ingrain it into their own belief system, self-confidence, and after 3 months they probably still know this trick because they came up with the solution and they immediately acted upon it and executed it in the correct way. So that would be a very effective, powerful type of feedback for you as a coach to give. So to summarize, the best effective way in this particular thing is to give the right questions towards the players, ask the right question, open-ended, so they can give you all the information and go around with different perspectives so the player comes up with their own solution in order for them to also execute upon their solution to build a positive experience and a positive belief system that they can do it, that they are on the road of improvement, so you can keep them motivated and have better improvement overall. So what we've just covered in, let's say, the feedback pyramid model that is shown in the right lower corner, that players are most motivated when they can execute on their own ideas. And when they do this, to add on even more, is when the players take notes. So maybe at the amateur scene, this is maybe a bit of an overkill, but especially at the more professional scenes, you want players to take notes, especially if they say they are that serious in improving. Because sometimes it's very hard to improve players and see that immediate effect, because those are like random events. But if they write it down what their mistakes or the good points of that day were, after a week they can look back at their notes and they will see a kind of pattern, and they can see like, oh, this kind of behavior is coming back to me. Maybe I should focus on more, and you have more information from the player and your own coach perspective as well to have a good conversation and what is needed in order for them to improve as well. So taking notes is always a good thing. So it can provide a productive process and personal development as well, because they take responsibility for their own learnings, and it is very efficient, a very efficient way for them to improve their own learnings about themselves, to stay critical and reflective of their own skill and where they need to go, and what is the difference between where they are and where they want to go. And now they probably know, after seeing a pattern, what they need and what to focus on even more or less in order to get towards the next level. When you want to give effective feedback, you have to distinguish the incidental mistakes with the structural mistakes. But if you see a lot of incidental mistakes, accidents, it could also be that the structural mistake is lack of focus, for example, that they are not right there inside the moment, or they had a rough day, or they are not motivated for the practice and they don't really care at the moment. That is something for you to feel at that moment to figure out as well. So more so look for patterns, the structural mistakes. So for example, in CSGO, if one person misses a utility like a smoke grenade on a specific spot, that can happen. That can happen to everyone. But for example, 2 rounds later, he's making another utility or smoke grenade on the same spot, the same mistake. How do you react? Is that already a pattern, or is it incidental now? So look for patterns, because that are the most effective ways for you to give feedback on, because it's not a one-off, but it's more so a structural thing, and it's maybe more deeper than that. So it's good to go deeper inside that problem or that mistake as well, to seek for patterns and see if there's a more underlying bigger problem. So you also want to check in how the player handled that situation. So if, for example, this Counter-Strike player misses his smoke for maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 times in a match, how does he react? Is he maybe very cool? Does he just think like, oh, if I don't react or say anything, maybe I will get away with this? Or maybe he's like very like, oh, what the hell am I doing right now? That's not how I should play. And do you know what is up? So those are also some good signs to look for in order to give feedback, get the full picture in, not only the action, but also the behavior of the player in that moment. So if you give that feedback, don't only give feedback on that action, but also the intention, and also connect the experience with it. So be curious and ask for experience. So Harry, when you missed that 3rd smoke in a row, or at this map, what was going through your mind? And you just giving the response that he was feeling. So you get really to the core of it. Maybe it was like, I'm not feeling it, or having a lot of thoughts, or like, yeah, it was like 2 weeks ago, the last time I did this, so I'm a bit shaky, or I'm a bit stressful, so my coordination is not right, or it could be anything. But you get more information in order to really dig down into the problem or the mistake pattern in order to resolve it. So maybe you need some mental coaching, maybe just more practice, or maybe it's just like a bad day. It can be anything, but it's for you to decide to get that information to be effective at your coaching. So what I just said as well is always coach on the intention with the corresponding observation. So oftentimes, and personally, this is a mistake oftentimes, to coach on the action. So there's a play being made, for example, by your players, and you will give the feedback of, hey, there was a play, there was a context, and you should be here, and then you should move there, and then we had this rotation, and you should do this, and then Harry and Jerry should move there. And you can talk all you want, but when you are talking about the specific play, ask for the intentions. So we made this play team, but it didn't work out. So when we started off, let's rewind it 1 minute ago. What was your intention as a team? Well, we wanted to set up vision, or we wanted to pincer the opponent and then make a play right then and there. And then you have this full information what the intention is, and you can correspond like the actions that you see with that intention, so you know exactly what is up and what went wrong. Because sometimes the intention can be good, but the execution was bad. So you can compliment them on their intention that it was good, but it was just executed bad, and you can feedback on the execution, and everyone is still on the same page. The dangerous thing is if the intention was bad but the play was good, so you think that, well, when you say it like that, it is quite a good play. But if you don't take into account the bad intention, next time it could be very bad as well, and they cannot fix it. Because maybe in the moment they had a good result, they won the round, or they won the objective, or they made that play, but the next time they cannot reproduce it because the intention was wrong and you don't understand that intention. So always ask about the intention of the player, the duo, of the team in itself. So you always get to the core and have all the information available for you to give the most effective feedback. So how should you react in feedback situations? Well, first, you want to give feedback when your player wants to reach the next level, if they are ready. If a player is fuming from the inside of his own play, or the enemy, or whatever reason, it is probably not a good time to give the feedback at the moment. Maybe when it calmed down a little bit, 15 minutes later, or maybe sometimes an hour. In severe situations, maybe even a day, you wait for the right timing. Because in order to give the best feedback, you want to have it at the right time as well. And the best time is when the player is open to receive feedback, that he is ready and has his focus on improvement in order to reach the next level, because he wants to. And when you feel that moment is there, and you can like scan the surface for a player, like, how did it go, Harry? Like, it's a terrible game. Then you probably know he's not ready for feedback. But when he gives you a response for like, yeah, it was difficult. I'm thinking how I could play this particular play better for next game. All right, Harry, let's take a look at this game. Shall we do this together and to see where you could improve? I also have some thoughts about it. So when he is accepting your offer of giving feedback, that is basically the best possible moment for you as a coach to really have that impact, because you have a player that has a experience, whether that's good or bad. He's open for improvement, and you know how to give effective feedback to have really that impact towards that player. To have this 90% chance in order to lay in the right perspectives and questions for order to him bring up his own solutions in order to act upon and execute on it, so he won't forget what needs to be done in order for him to reach the next level. So when you are in this situation with a particular player or just a team and they are open to get feedback, compliment them. It doesn't have to be like, oh team, I find this so terrific that blah blah blah. It can be just short, like, good, perfect, I like that attitude, let's get into it. Or just like a thumbs up, like, good job. Just non-verbal positive feedback is already good as well. But compliment them so they feel at home and they feel a little bit praised as well, and proud that they reach out to you and want to learn from you as a coach as well. So instill the positive feedback as well within your coaching. In order to be the most effective with giving feedback, you want to handle a couple of rules. So these rules are very important to give the most effective feedback. Sometimes the situation really doesn't let you, or maybe emotions take over. We're all human, and it is sometimes very difficult to hold our assumptions and our judgment and our own view of the game or a specific person towards ourselves. But in order to be the most professional way of giving feedback that we possibly can, these are the 8 rules where you want to look at. So number 1, feedback must relate to observable behavior. If you want to give negative feedback and you want to see a pattern, it's always good for you as a coach to write some facts down in what kind of behavior you're seeing. So for example, if someone is disengaged in a team meeting, he's looking down or on his phone all the time, or he's chatting on Twitter or Discord or TeamSpeak and not really engaged for your sense, write down what you see, that he's typing, he's looking down, he's with his phone. So you don't make assumptions, but you just collect those facts with behavior as well. And this is the opposite is also true of seeing the positive side of someone that is doing a positive thing. For example, you see a pattern that someone is giving more compliments, he's doing his workout every day, and he's eating a healthy breakfast and a healthy lunch. So in order to give that positive feedback, you can also collect those positive things as well in order to give back to them. So the feedback must be a description, no interpretation of judgment. So you don't want to give judgment, for example, if they are on Twitter or Discord, in the negative example that I just mentioned, that they are very disengaged. Maybe they are listening, but it comes over that they are disengaged. You don't really know. And instead of making assumptions, it's better to ask when you're giving the feedback and bringing in the facts, what make it look like that he is disengaged. So he understands where you're coming from, but he doesn't feel attacked, right? And also from the positive part, if you don't make judgment that he's happy, ask it. Maybe he's just is playing good weather in front of everyone while it's maybe going bad. Oftentimes it isn't. Oftentimes it's just like positive when there's something positive, but you never know. Don't make assumptions. So ask the questions. So number 3, the time between the behavior and the feedback should be as short as possible. So for example, in the negative side, if someone is disengaged inside a meeting, you bring up those facts, you write them down during the meeting, and after the meeting is done, you confront the individual player with his behavior, if that is the right time, or maybe within the meeting itself, if you see that pattern for maybe 5 minutes and it starts to irritate, or you see also maybe the behavioral responses of different players that really don't like it. So that's something you can bring up then and there for the most direct and effective feedback effect. Number 4 is don't give advice. And this is often an overlooked thing of coaches. They want to give advice. If I were you, I should do this. Or next time, I think you can do that. Or there are some things that I think you can do, so maybe look at what you can do next time. And it becomes really vague only by listening to me, because it sounds nice into the moment when you give advice and we think like, oh, we're the mentor role and we should give advice. It's often a bad idea to give advice. Let me tell you why. Because when you give advice, they think it is part of me now and I decide if I want to change, yes or no. And sometimes it can work, but oftentimes the best way to have this feedback is positive or negative, is it can become the opposite effect. It can become a backfire for you. So if you give advice and, for example, if I were you, I would play on the right side of the map and buy this item and use this ability right then and there. But he will be thinking, well, I'm not you or you're not me, so I'm just playing my own game, and you didn't get through him with your advice. So as a coach, when you are giving feedback, say what you mean and what you want to see improving after you had this whole conversation as well. That is the most effective way. Don't give advice. So number 5, the player must be able to do something with your information. So for example, if you only stay vague, for example, that particular player is disengaged in a meeting and you only say, I see that you're doing just like hunch forward and not looking at us when we are talking, for example, and it just feels bad. The player could think like, okay, should I just look up and look you in the eyes? Yeah, that's one thing, but there's not much that I can do with this kind of feedback. Maybe this is enough, or I'm not really sure how should I change my behavior. So be always aware that you give something that they can actually improve on and they can do something with your information. So think a bit ahead and towards the future, what the conversation will look like, and if it actually is something that it can do something with. So number 6, formulate the feedback in a way so he can openly respond. So instead of, you did this bad, you need to improve this, so next time I want to see this, there's no room for the player to give his feedback, his intention, all these types of things. So you want to formulate the feedback in a way that is open. So for example, hey, you made this play, what do you think of your own play? So they have their own room to give feedback on the play, because oftentimes the player will see for itself maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 times that it could be improved, and he might have already a solution at the ready. But you giving the solution and not giving him any room to openly respond, it will take away his own intrinsic motivation to improve. And over time, if you do this long enough, for example 2 or 3 months, players can actually get lazy by you only giving the solutions as well. So stay open, let them be involved, so they come up with their own solutions and they can execute on it. That is the most effective way. So number 7, avoid any form of disqualification. So what this means is that you say already before you let them openly speak that you dislike something or that you don't want to see anything else. For example, when in a team session, this particular player again is disengaged from the team and he's looking down. For example, you already say, dude, I don't want you to look down again. I want you to look up, and the way you're behaving is very bad because this is the influence of the team and I want you to improve. Although that might sound authoritarian and maybe in some way it can be interpreted as powerful, you already made a judgment and disqualification or disqualify his own behavior that is not acceptable, and there's no room for him to be there or to act upon that information. But maybe in the near future there's a particular situation where it is allowed. Maybe doesn't feel comfortable and just want to zone out for a little bit, but it feels too uncomfortable. So be aware of what you are saying and that you don't rule things out that could happen or should happen. Always ask for the intention, the full information, and the open questions so you can involve the player for order to them to bring their own solutions in what they should do. And that is the best way to have the effective improvement. So last but not least, number 8, be aware of your timing. Give feedback when the player is open to receive feedback. So just as before, be careful when you give the feedback. If a player is fuming, don't give feedback. If a player is super positive and jumping around after game that he won, don't give feedback. Let him just like spend that energy jumping around, hugging his teammates, etc., screaming through the mic if that is his thing. So don't jump right away on giving feedback. Feel it when the right timing is to give that type of feedback in order to improve that player towards the next level. So this comes with experience, to feel and know the players when it is the best time for them to come up with feedback as well. And there you go, the 8 rules to give effective feedback in any type of situation, whether that's positive or negative. We're slowly going towards the end of this video, but before we go, we're gonna have this one particular very important sheet as well with some very good focus points. So be sure to write this down and really ingrain it into your mind, because this may be the most important part of giving effective feedback. And that is compliment when things are going well. I cannot stress this enough. A lot of times we think are still in the paradigm that giving feedback is negative and only focused on mistakes, but research has shown that it is actually the opposite. If you really want to improve players, we want to really focus on what is going well and to compliment them. So compliment when things are going well. If you see them making a good play, or they show that they are taking risk, or they're putting themselves out there, or they give good ideas into the team, or they're holding other people accountable and they show leadership, all these different kinds of things, give them compliments, because if they give compliments, they feel good, they feel empowered, they feel self-confident, and they will show that positive behavior even more. So please give more confidence and positive feedback. So because the coach who only points out mistakes opens the trap of perfectionism. By pinpointing out every little mistake, sometimes you need to point out very detailed mistakes, nitty-gritty stuff, But if you keep doing it all the time, it's getting really annoying, and you hurt the players and the whole team process as a whole. And you'll get into the rut of perfectionism, and there's almost no way of perfectionism within esports. Why? You can play within your perspective as perfect, but the opponent always react in a different way, and you don't know how they will react or you will react towards them. So every game, every play is always a different situation, so you never get to perfection at all. So take away what is good and focus on the most impactful things that you and your team can improve on in order to have the most impact. Because if you stick with this little bunch of mistakes that could improve the team by 5%, that can be a problem if there's also a big problem to be solved and paid attention to. And when you solve that, the team improves by 15%. So weigh out the options that you have and don't get too much into the nitty-gritty of giving feedback. And when you involve the players with giving positive feedback for the most part, and let the players tell what went well and how they got to that point. For example, a different play, what made you make the play, and really get specific. When was it? Where were you on the map? What were you thinking? Be very precise. Maybe they saw something on the mini-map and you can compliment them like, yeah, I saw you looking on the mini-map there, or I saw you really communicating. You gave instant feedback, so they heard where you are and they could make decisions faster. So it's very important to be very precise. What did you see? What did you feel? How did you handle it? And how did you experience the whole situation and the event that was going on? And what kind of advantage did it bring? Or were there any downsides towards this as well? So you help them think why they became in that situation so good. What was it that made them towards that point? And sometimes maybe in the beginning, if you give this effective feedback all the time, in the beginning of this process of giving feedback, they might stay shallow, but the more you ask them, the more questions you ask them, the more they understand to reflect on their own gameplay, so they are able to reproduce the same process, so they have the best chances to get to their winning result. So that is what you're trying to do with also the positive feedback. So you become very deadly and very effective with your feedback. So in order to focus on those best moments, that is very good, because those aspects stick towards their performance. If they made a ridiculous play with something extraordinary, or you and your team worked with a type of process of communication protocol and it worked, really compliment them. Make it really fat so they really know and feel that they're doing something right and they're on the way to reach their next level. So these are all the things about feedback right now. And take a look at the video again, scroll back if you missed something, look at your notes and see what you got. And I'm very curious what you've learned out of this video, so please comment down below and would like to see it as well. And that is it, guys, for this video. Hope you enjoyed it a lot and it brought you a lot of value for you to reach the next level by getting the people side of esports right, by understanding more of giving effective feedback and also some practical tips and tools for you to apply it as well. So if you liked this video and it brought you value, please like and comment down below what you thought of it. And also, if you want to have more of this type of content to improve yourself, your team, or your surrounding, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you'll be the first to get the new updates of new videos as well, to bring you even more value. So also check out the other videos on the channel as well if you want to improve more. We made the playlist. It's probably over there in the corner that you can click. So be sure to check every video out if you want to become the best version of yourself within esports. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.